Strong, armored, ancient beyond measure. When the sky burned and the world collapsed into darkness 66 million years ago, nearly everything perished. The mighty dinosaurs that had ruled the planet for over 160 million years vanished in geological moments. Forests turned to ash, oceans acidified, the very air became poison. Yet through this apocalypse, through the end of an entire world, one group of predators not only survived but emerged virtually unchanged, carrying forward a design so perfect that nature saw no need to alter it. These were the crocodilians, living fossils that bridged the age of reptiles to our modern world. Their story is not one of dominance through power, but of persistence through adaptation, not conquest through strength, but survival through efficiency. Please let us know in the comments where you are watching this history video and what time you are watching it, and be sure to subscribe to the channel for future videos. The crocodile's journey through deep time represents one of nature's most extraordinary success stories, a testament to the power of specialization and the value of restraint in an ever-changing world. To understand how these remarkable creatures outlasted catastrophe after catastrophe, we must first travel back to a world unimaginably different from our own, to the final days of the Cretaceous period, when life flourished in abundance and complexity beneath skies soon to be torn apart by fire and stone. Imagine the world as it existed 66 million years ago, in those final millennia before the impact. The planet was warmer than today, substantially so, with tropical and subtropical climates extending far toward both poles. There were no ice caps gleaming white at the ends of the Earth. Sea levels stood higher, flooding continental margins and creating vast shallow seas that teemed with life. The geography itself differed markedly from our familiar continents. The Atlantic Ocean, still young in geological terms, continued to widen as the Americas drifted westward from Europe and Africa. India, not yet collided with Asia, journeyed northward as an island continent across the ancient Tethys Sea. Australia remained connected to Antarctica, both landmasses far south of their present positions. In this late Cretaceous world, life had reached spectacular heights of diversity and specialization. The dinosaurs, those magnificent reptiles that had dominated terrestrial ecosystems since the Triassic period, had evolved into forms both familiar and alien to modern eyes. The tyrannosaurs, apex predators of the northern continents, hunted with bone-crushing jaws and keen senses. The hadrosaurs, duck-billed herbivores, moved in great herds across coastal plains, their elaborate head crests perhaps producing calls that echoed across ancient valleys. The ceratopsians, horned and frilled, defended themselves against predators with formidable weaponry. Armored ankylosaurs plodded through forests like living tanks, their tails transformed into devastating clubs. In the southern continents, different lineages held sway. The abelisaurids, shorter-faced predators with peculiarly reduced arms, filled the apex predator niche in what would become South America and India. Titanosaurs, the largest land animals ever to walk the earth, browsed on vegetation with necks stretched impossibly high, their immense bodies supported by pillar-like legs. Some of these gentle giants reached lengths approaching 100 feet and masses of 70 tons or more, pushing the absolute limits of what terrestrial life could achieve. The skies belonged to the pterosaurs, flying reptiles that had evolved powered flight long before birds. By the late Cretaceous, they had achieved extraordinary diversity, from tiny insect eaters the size of sparrows to the azhdarchids, giants with wingspans exceeding 30 feet, the largest flying animals in Earth's history. These tremendous creatures stalked through terrestrial environments like storks the size of giraffes, snatching prey with elongated, toothless beaks. The oceans presented their own spectacular menagerie. Mosasaurs, marine reptiles descended from terrestrial lizards, ruled as apex predators, some species reaching lengths of 50 feet or more. Their streamlined bodies and powerful tails propelled them through ancient seas in pursuit of fish, ammonites, and even other marine reptiles. Plesiosaurs, with their distinctive long necks, or in some lineages, massive heads on short necks, hunted in deeper waters. Sea turtles, some species enormous, navigated warm currents. Countless varieties of sharks patrolled all marine environments from shallows to abyssal depths. Beneath the waves, the ocean floor hosted communities of organisms both familiar and strange. Ammonites, shelled cephalopods related to modern nautilus, squid, and octopi, spiraled through the water column in countless species, from thumbnail-sized to specimens exceeding 6 feet in diameter. Belemnites, squid-like creatures with internal shells, schooled in vast numbers. Bony fish had diversified extensively, presaging the incredible variety we see today. Plankton bloomed in surface waters, forming the foundation of oceanic food chains. Terrestrial plant life had undergone revolutionary changes during the Cretaceous. The flowering plants, angiosperms, had appeared and rapidly diversified, transforming landscapes and creating new ecological opportunities. By the late Cretaceous, recognizable trees existed, magnolias, sycamores, and relatives of modern palms and laurels among them. These plants had evolved intimate relationships with insects, particularly the bees, wasps, and butterflies that pollinated them. The coevolution of flowering plants and their pollinators represented one of evolution's great success stories, generating much of the terrestrial biodiversity that characterizes our modern world. Yet alongside these newer plant forms, more ancient lineages persisted. Conifers, especially in upland and polar regions, continued to thrive. Ferns carpeted forest floors. Cycads and their relatives, holdovers from even earlier periods, maintained their ecological positions in certain environments. The plant communities of the late Cretaceous represented a transitional state, mixing the old and new, the primitive and advanced. Into this thriving, complex world lived the crocodilians, already ancient by the standards of the late Cretaceous. Their lineage extended back to the Triassic period, over 230 million years ago, when their ancestors diverged from the line that would lead to dinosaurs and birds. These early crocodile relatives, the crocodilomorphs, had experimented with various body plans and lifestyles. Some were terrestrial runners, pursuing prey on long legs across Triassic landscapes. Others were armored herbivores. Still others had already adopted the semi-aquatic ambush predator lifestyle that would prove so successful. By the Cretaceous, crocodilians had largely settled into forms recognizable to modern eyes. They occupied freshwater rivers, lakes, and wetlands across the globe. Some species ventured into coastal marine environments. Their basic body plan, refined over millions of years, proved remarkably effective. A long, muscular tail for propulsion in water, sprawling legs that allowed for movement on land, powerful jaws studded with conical teeth for gripping prey, and armored skin providing protection against rivals and larger predators. The crocodilians of the late Cretaceous varied considerably in size and specialization. Some species remained relatively small, perhaps 5 or 6 feet in length, occupying ecological niches as mid-level predators. Others grew enormous, with species like Dinosaurs potentially reaching lengths of 35 feet or more, large enough to prey upon dinosaurs that came to water's edge to drink. These giants embodied the crocodilian hunting strategy at its most impressive, lying motionless in murky water, only eyes and nostrils breaking the surface, waiting with infinite patience for prey to venture within striking distance. What made crocodilians special, what set them apart from so many other creatures of their time, was not spectacular specialization to a narrow niche, but rather a suite of physiological and behavioral adaptations that provided resilience and flexibility. They were not the fastest predators, nor the strongest, nor the most intelligent. They did not dominate their environments through overwhelming force of numbers or adaptive radiation into countless specialized forms. Instead, they had achieved something more valuable in the long term: sustainable efficiency. The crocodilian metabolism operated on fundamentally different principles than the endothermic, warm-blooded systems of mammals and birds. As ectotherms, cold-blooded animals, crocodilians did not generate their own body heat through metabolic processes. Instead, they regulated their temperature behaviorally, basking in sunlight to warm up, retreating to water or shade to cool down. This approach required far less energy than maintaining a constant internal temperature through metabolism. The energy savings proved enormous. A mammalian predator of equivalent size to a large crocodile might require 10 or even 15 times as much food to maintain its metabolism. This warm-blooded predator needed constant fuel to keep its internal furnace burning, to maintain its body temperature regardless of external conditions. When food became scarce, this became a critical vulnerability. The mammal had to keep eating, keep hunting, or it would weaken and die within days or weeks. The crocodile faced no such constraint. Its low metabolic rate meant it could survive for months, even up to a year in some documented cases, without eating. After a large meal, a crocodile could retreat into a state of minimal activity, allowing its slow digestive system to gradually process the food while expending almost no energy. The crocodile's heart rate dropped, its breathing slowed. It became, in essence, a living statue, conserving every possible calorie for the uncertain times ahead. This metabolic strategy did come with trade-offs. Crocodilians could not sustain prolonged activity. They were ambush predators, not pursuit hunters. Their attacks relied on explosive bursts of speed and power, fueled by anaerobic metabolism that could not be maintained for long. After an attack, successful or not, a crocodile needed time to recover as lactic acid built up in its muscles. They could not chase prey across long distances, could not maintain mammalian or avian levels of sustained activity. But in their chosen lifestyle, these limitations mattered little. Crocodilians had no need for endurance hunting. They perfected the art of patient waiting, of becoming part of the landscape until opportunity presented itself. This strategy worked because crocodilians occupied environments where prey inevitably came to them. Every terrestrial animal needed water. Every creature living in or near aquatic environments had to deal with the ever-present threat of the crocodile. The semi-aquatic nature of crocodilian life provided another crucial advantage, one that would prove vitally important in the coming catastrophe. By existing at the interface between water and land, crocodilians enjoyed benefits of both environments while remaining vulnerable to neither. The water provided concealment, a three-dimensional hunting space, thermal buffering against temperature extremes, and protection from terrestrial threats. The land offered basking sites for thermoregulation, nesting areas safe from aquatic predators, and access to terrestrial prey. This environmental flexibility meant crocodilians were not dependent on any single habitat type. A species living in a river system had access to fish, turtles, and other aquatic prey, but could also take terrestrial animals that came to drink, and could consume carrion washed into the water from surrounding lands. If one food source diminished, others remained available. If terrestrial conditions became intolerable, the crocodile could retreat fully into the water. If aquatic conditions degraded, it could move overland to find new water bodies. The crocodilian respiratory system contributed to this efficiency and flexibility. Unlike mammals, which rely solely on diaphragmatic breathing, crocodiles possess a sophisticated system involving both diaphragm and rib movement, along with unique features that allow for exceptional breath holding and oxygen conservation. The crocodilian heart, while typically four-chambered like those of birds and mammals, possesses a special adaptation called the foramen of Panizza, a small opening that allows blood to be shunted away from the lungs when the animal is submerged. This anatomical feature serves multiple purposes. When a crocodile holds its breath underwater, whether waiting in ambush or hiding from danger, it can redirect blood flow away from the lungs, conserving oxygen for the brain and vital organs. The blood that would normally go to the non-functioning lungs instead circulates through the body, increasing the efficiency of oxygen use. This allows crocodilians to remain submerged for extended periods, in some cases hours, especially when inactive and cool. Furthermore, crocodilians can engage in anaerobic metabolism to supplement their oxygen needs during breath holding. They tolerate lactic acid buildup far better than mammals, allowing them to function without breathing for remarkably long periods. This capability provided not just hunting advantages but survival benefits, the ability to wait out poor conditions, to remain hidden from threats, to endure circumstances that would suffocate less adapted creatures. The feeding ecology of crocodilians demonstrated another aspect of their resilience: opportunism. While individual species might show preferences for certain prey types, crocodilians as a group were not specialists. They were generalist carnivores, consuming whatever protein sources their environment provided. Fish, turtles, mammals, birds, other reptiles, carrion, even members of their own species under certain circumstances, all could serve as crocodile food. This dietary flexibility meant crocodilians were not tied to the fate of any particular prey species. If one food source disappeared, they could switch to others. If all large prey vanished, they could subsist on smaller animals. If fresh kills became scarce, they could scavenge carrion. Their powerful jaws and digestive systems allowed them to process almost any animal matter, including bones, shells, and other hard tissues that many predators could not utilize. The crocodilian digestive system itself represented a marvel of efficiency. Stomach acids of remarkable potency, among the strongest of any vertebrate, dissolved bones and other hard materials, extracting nutrients that would pass through other predators unused. This ability to fully process prey meant crocodilians wasted little, extracting maximum caloric value from every meal. Combined with their low metabolic needs, this meant a single successful hunt could sustain them for weeks or months. The reproductive strategy of crocodilians also contributed to their long-term success, though perhaps less obviously than their metabolic and ecological adaptations. Crocodilians are among the rare reptiles that engage in parental care. Females construct nests, either holes dug in sand or banks or mounds built from vegetation. They guard these nests throughout the incubation period, protecting the eggs from predators. After hatching, the mother assists the young to water and continues to protect them for weeks, months, or even years depending on the species. This parental investment increased offspring survival rates compared to reptiles that simply laid eggs and departed. However, crocodilians did not invest as heavily in each offspring as mammals or birds might. A female crocodile could lay dozens of eggs in a clutch, compensating for inevitable losses to predation, flooding, temperature extremes, and other hazards. This represented a middle strategy between the extreme investment of mammals and the neglect typical of most reptiles, providing enough care to boost survival while maintaining the reproductive capacity to recover from population crashes. The temperature-dependent sex determination system employed by crocodilians added another layer of reproductive flexibility. Rather than sex being determined by chromosomes, as in mammals and birds, the temperature of the developing eggs during a critical period determined whether hatchlings would be male or female. Warmer temperatures produced one sex, cooler temperatures the other, with the specific pattern varying among species. This system allowed populations to adjust their sex ratios in response to environmental conditions. In stable times, nests at various temperatures and locations would produce a natural mix of sexes. In changing environmental conditions, shifts in temperature could alter sex ratios, potentially providing some adaptive advantage. The system demonstrated remarkable plasticity, allowing crocodilian reproduction to respond to circumstances in ways that chromosomal sex determination could not. The social behavior of crocodilians, while not complex compared to mammals or birds, nonetheless showed more sophistication than typically credited to reptiles. Crocodilians communicate using visual signals, body postures, chemical cues, and vocalizations. They produce a surprising variety of sounds, from the deep bellows of territorial males to the distress calls of hatchlings, from threatening hisses to the contact calls that help groups coordinate their activities. Some species exhibit social structures beyond simple aggregations. Dominance hierarchies determine access to prime basking spots and breeding opportunities. Individuals recognize each other, remember past interactions, and adjust their behavior accordingly. While not approaching the social complexity of wolf packs or elephant herds, crocodilian societies demonstrated that even cold-blooded reptiles could develop and benefit from social organization. This combination of traits, low metabolism, semi-aquatic lifestyle, dietary opportunism, efficient physiology, moderate parental care, and behavioral flexibility, positioned crocodilians uniquely for survival in changing conditions. They were neither the most specialized nor the most dominant creatures of their age, but they had achieved a sustainable balance, a way of life that required little, adapted to much, and persisted through changing times. For millions of years during the Cretaceous, this lifestyle served crocodilians well. They shared their world with dinosaurs, pterosaurs, and countless other creatures, occupying their niche as semi-aquatic predators without serious competition. The dinosaurs dominated on land, the pterosaurs ruled the skies, the marine reptiles controlled the oceans, the crocodilians held the interfaces, the riverbanks and lakeshores, the swamps and estuaries where water met land. The late Cretaceous world seemed stable, or at least as stable as any ecosystem can be over millions of years. Species came and went, evolving and going extinct in the normal churn of evolutionary change. Climates shifted gradually, sea levels rose and fell, continents continued their imperceptible drift, but the fundamental structure of life remained consistent. The dinosaurs maintained their dominance on land, the pterosaurs owned the skies, marine reptiles prowled the oceans. Crocodilians endured in their aquatic realms. Unknown to all these thriving creatures, catastrophe approached from the depths of space. An asteroid, a mountain of rock and metal perhaps 6 miles in diameter, followed an orbit that would intersect Earth's path. This object, likely a fragment from the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, had wandered the solar system for billions of years, a cold, dead rock tumbling through the void. Now, by cosmic chance or gravitational perturbation, its trajectory aimed directly at a small blue planet teeming with life. The asteroid traveled at approximately 45,000 miles per hour relative to Earth. At such velocity, the rock possessed unimaginable kinetic energy. The impact, when it came, would release energy equivalent to billions of nuclear weapons, millions of times more powerful than any volcanic eruption in recorded history. The explosion would be visible from space, a flash of light as rock and soil vaporized instantly, temperatures reaching tens of thousands of degrees. But the asteroid remained far away, unseeable, unknowable. On Earth, life continued its ancient patterns. Dinosaurs migrated with the seasons. Pterosaurs soared on thermal currents. Marine reptiles dove into dark waters. Crocodiles basked on muddy banks, waiting for prey with timeless patience. The sun rose and set, rains fell, forests grew. The world turned beautiful and doomed, counting down its final days of normalcy. In the shallow seas that covered much of what would become North America, a warm seaway split the continent from north to south. This western interior seaway teemed with life, fish, ammonites, marine reptiles, and countless other organisms. Along its shores, dinosaurs lived in abundance. Herds of hadrosaurs browsed on coastal vegetation. Tyrannosaurs hunted in the highlands. Ceratopsians defended their territories with lowered horns and frilled heads. In what is now the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico, a shallow tropical sea lapped against limestone shores. Coral reefs fringed the coastline. Fish schooled in clear waters. Marine life flourished in all its Cretaceous diversity. The Caribbean and Gulf of Mexico existed as younger, smaller versions of their modern selves, warm waters that fostered rich ecosystems. This region would become ground zero for the impact, the place where the asteroid would strike. The depth of water, approximately half a mile, would do nothing to slow the incoming projectile. The asteroid would pass through the water essentially without noticing it, carrying all its cosmic velocity into impact with the seafloor beneath. The ocean would provide no cushion, no protection. It would simply add to the destruction, instantly vaporized into steam, then hurled outward in walls of water thousands of feet high. But for now, in the final days before impact, this was simply another tropical sea, peaceful and productive, harboring no hint of the apocalypse descending from above. Sea turtles nested on beaches. Fish spawned in coastal shallows. Pterosaurs plucked prey from the surface waters. Life proceeded as it had for millions of years, in cycles and patterns shaped by evolution and ecology. In freshwater systems across the globe, crocodilians went about their business. A large individual might have basked on a riverbank in what would become Montana, belly full from a recent meal, perhaps a young hadrosaur caught while drinking. The crocodile's metabolism worked slowly, processing the food, extracting nutrients, storing energy for the uncertain future. The animal had no thoughts beyond immediate experience, the warmth of the sun, the solidity of the mud beneath its body, the ever-present awareness of surroundings honed by millions of years of evolution. Elsewhere, a female prepared her nest, excavating a hole in a sandy bank, her instincts driving her to create the proper depth and shape. She would lay her eggs, cover them carefully, and begin her long vigil, guarding them from predators, waiting through weeks of incubation for the moment when she would hear the calls of her hatchlings, ready to emerge. She could not know that the eggs she so carefully tended would hatch into a world transformed, that the young crocodiles breaking free of their shells would enter an earth in the process of dying. Around the planet, similar scenes played out. Crocodilians occupied their ecological niches, neither dominant nor marginal, simply present and persistent. They were not the largest predators in most environments. They did not drive ecosystem dynamics. They filled their role, doing what crocodilians had done for millions of years, waiting, hunting, reproducing, enduring. The asteroid continued its approach. If any creature on Earth had possessed the knowledge and instruments to detect it, they might have seen a point of light growing brighter in the sky, a star that moved against the fixed background of the celestial sphere. Day by day, hour by hour, it drew closer, accelerating as Earth's gravity captured it and drew it down toward impact. The terminal velocity, the final speed at impact, would be approximately 12 miles per second. At this speed, the asteroid would cross the distance from the edge of space to the surface in less than 2 seconds. There would be no warning, no time for any creature to react. One moment, the world as it had always been. The next, fire and fury beyond imagination. The impact occurred during what would have been early morning in the impact region. The asteroid struck at an angle of approximately 60 degrees from horizontal, plunging into the shallow sea off the coast of the Yucatan Peninsula. In less than a second, everything within hundreds of miles simply ceased to exist. The asteroid and an equal volume of Earth's crust vaporized instantly, transformed from solid matter to plasma at temperatures higher than the surface of the sun. The impact crater, eventually to be known as Chicxulub, though it would not be discovered for another 66 million years, formed in seconds. Rock behaved like fluid under the incomprehensible forces involved. The Earth's crust rippled outward from the impact point like waves in a pond, except these waves were made of solid rock and measured miles in height. The crater collapsed and rebounded, creating a multi-ring basin over 100 miles in diameter, with a peak ring rising thousands of feet above the crater floor. The immediate effects extended for thousands of miles. The impact released energy equivalent to approximately 100 million megatons of TNT. Everything within 600 miles of ground zero received instantly lethal doses of thermal radiation. Forests ignited spontaneously. Animals vaporized. The ground itself melted. Massive earthquakes, registering magnitude 11 or greater, shook the entire planet. No fault line tremor this, but the ringing of the earth like a struck bell. The impact vaporized massive quantities of rock, including sulfur-rich deposits in the Yucatan limestone. This material, reduced to its constituent atoms, shot upward into the atmosphere and beyond. Some ejecta achieved orbital velocity, flung into space by the force of the impact. Some of this material would eventually fall back to Earth. Some would escape Earth's gravity entirely, to wander the solar system for eternity, fragments of Earth forever lost to the cosmos. Most of the ejected material followed ballistic trajectories, arcing up into the atmosphere and then falling back across the planet. This ejecta included droplets of melted rock, tektites that would solidify during their flight and fall as glassy spherules. It included shocked quartz, crystalline structures that could only form under the immense pressures of an impact. It included a global layer of iridium, a rare element on Earth's surface but common in asteroids, that would someday provide the key evidence allowing scientists to understand what had happened on this terrible day. The ejecta curtain spread outward at enormous velocity. Material flung into the upper atmosphere began to rain down across North America within an hour. The falling debris, still hot from the impact and atmospheric friction, began to ignite fires. Trees caught, dry vegetation combusted. Within hours, wildfires burned across the continent. The heat from the falling ejecta, distributed globally as the planet rotated beneath the spreading curtain of debris, may have been sufficient to ignite fires across the entire world. The impact also generated tsunamis of unimaginable scale. The asteroid struck in shallow water, and the force of impact displaced trillions of tons of seawater instantly. Waves hundreds of feet high radiated outward at the speed of a jet aircraft. Within hours, these walls of water inundated coastlines throughout the Gulf of Mexico and Caribbean. The waves swept hundreds of miles inland, scouring everything in their path, depositing a chaotic mixture of marine and terrestrial organisms in jumbled layers that would fossilize and someday testify to the destruction. The western interior seaway, that shallow sea that split North America, experienced catastrophic sloshing as seismic waves and displaced water crashed back and forth. Coastal ecosystems were obliterated. Marine life died in uncountable numbers. The bodies of dinosaurs, pterosaurs, marine reptiles, fish, and invertebrates mixed together in what paleontologists would eventually term a mass death assemblage. Entire ecosystems jumbled together in the violence of the impact's immediate aftermath. But as terrible as these immediate effects were, they represented only the beginning. The dinosaurs and other creatures that lived far from the impact, that survived the earthquakes and escaped the tsunamis, that weathered the first hours of fire, still faced a world turning hostile in ways both subtle and profound. The true catastrophe was just beginning, and it would unfold over months and years, killing not through violent destruction, but through the slow starvation of entire ecosystems. The material ejected into the upper atmosphere began to spread globally within days. Fine dust and aerosols formed a layer high in the stratosphere, above the weather systems that might wash it out through rain. This layer reflected incoming sunlight, scattering it back into space before it could reach the surface. Day by day, the sky darkened. The sun, when visible at all, appeared dim and reddish through the haze. Photosynthesis, the foundation of nearly all terrestrial and marine food chains, began to falter. Plants require sunlight to convert carbon dioxide and water into sugars and oxygen. With sunlight blocked, this process slowed and stopped. The impact had occurred during spring or summer in the northern hemisphere, prime growing season. Now, in the weeks following impact, plants stopped growing. Those dependent on continuous photosynthesis began to die. The effect cascaded through ecosystems with ruthless logic. Herbivorous insects starved as plants died. Small herbivorous mammals and reptiles found less and less to eat. Herbivorous dinosaurs, with their enormous metabolic requirements, faced catastrophic food shortages. A large sauropod might need to consume hundreds of pounds of plant matter daily to maintain its bulk. When fresh vegetation disappeared, these giants faced starvation measured in weeks, not months. The carnivores initially benefited from the abundance of dying herbivores. A tyrannosaur could feast on dead and dying hadrosaurs, but this was a temporary bounty. As the herbivores disappeared, the carnivores lost their food base. The large theropods, with their high metabolic demands, could not survive long without prey. Perhaps some turned to scavenging, to cannibalism, to desperate hunting of increasingly scarce victims. But in the end, the mathematics were simple and brutal. Without herbivores, carnivores starved. In the oceans, a similar collapse unfolded. The dust and aerosols blocked sunlight from penetrating the water. Phytoplankton, microscopic photosynthetic organisms that form the base of marine food chains, died in massive numbers. The zooplankton that fed on phytoplankton starved. The fish that ate zooplankton died. The larger predators, deprived of prey, followed them into extinction. The ammonites, those beautiful spiraled cephalopods that had flourished in Mesozoic seas for hundreds of millions of years, disappeared completely. The exact mechanism remains debated. They may have been particularly vulnerable to ocean acidification, to the loss of their planktonic food sources, or to temperature changes. But whatever the specific cause, the impact drove them to total extinction. Every species, every lineage, gone. Only their fossilized shells remained, pressed into stone, mute testimony to lost diversity. The marine reptiles, the mosasaurs and plesiosaurs that had ruled oceanic food chains, found themselves in a collapsing ecosystem. As fish populations crashed, these large predators faced starvation. Their size and metabolic demands became liabilities. Some may have survived for months, hunting the dwindling stocks of fish and squid, perhaps resorting to cannibalism or scavenging. But in the end, every species of marine reptile disappeared. These magnificent creatures, apex predators that had evolved over millions of years to dominate marine environments, could not survive the sudden severance of their food supply. The pterosaurs, those remarkable flying reptiles that had mastered the air for over 160 million years, also vanished completely. Many likely died in the immediate aftermath of the impact, from the heat pulse of falling ejecta or the global wildfires. But even those that survived the first days faced insurmountable challenges. Flying requires enormous energy. Pterosaurs, especially the largest species with their tremendous wingspans, needed abundant food to power their flight. As ecosystems collapsed, as fish populations crashed and small terrestrial animals disappeared, the pterosaurs lost their food base. Unable to sustain their energy-intensive lifestyle, they died out, leaving the skies empty of large flying animals for the first time in over 150 million years. The global wildfires consumed vast areas of forest and grassland. The fires added their own contribution to atmospheric pollution, pumping smoke and soot into air already choked with impact dust. In some regions, firestorms may have created their own weather systems, generating winds and lightning that spread the destruction further. The fires released enormous quantities of carbon dioxide, adding to the atmospheric chaos. When the fires finally burned out, vast areas stood as charred wasteland. The vegetation that had anchored soils and moderated local climates was gone. Without plant cover, erosion accelerated. Rain, when it came, washed away topsoil, creating badlands of exposed rock and sediment. The recovery of plant communities would take years, decades, or centuries depending on location and severity of damage. The sulfur compounds ejected by the impact underwent chemical transformations in the atmosphere, creating sulfuric acid aerosols. These fell as acid rain, poisoning water supplies and further damaging plant life. The oceans absorbed some of this acidity, lowering their pH and creating hostile conditions for shell-forming organisms. The delicate calcium carbonate shells and skeletons of countless invertebrates dissolved in the acidified water, adding another mechanism of death to the multiple catastrophes unfolding simultaneously. As months passed, another crisis emerged. The dust and aerosols that blocked sunlight also prevented heat from radiating back into space. But the short-term cooling effect dominated initially. Global temperatures plummeted. The impact occurred during northern hemisphere summer, but within weeks, temperatures fell to winter levels and continued dropping. An impact winter gripped the planet, with temperatures in some regions falling by as much as 50 degrees Fahrenheit. This temperature crash added another stress to already dying ecosystems. Cold-blooded animals, dependent on external temperatures to regulate their metabolism, found themselves unable to maintain activity levels. Many dinosaurs, despite possible warm-blooded or intermediate metabolisms, could not cope with the sudden cold. Eggs failed to develop properly. Hatchlings died from exposure. Adults weakened and became more vulnerable to disease and predation. The darkness and cold persisted for months, perhaps years. Estimates vary, but most scientists believe the worst effects lasted at least several months to possibly 2 years. During this time, photosynthesis remained severely inhibited. Only the hardiest plants survived, those capable of dormancy, those with seed banks buried in soil, those fortunate enough to occupy protected microenvironments where some light penetrated. In this nightmare world of darkness, cold, and starvation, the vast majority of species died out. The dinosaurs, after their 160 million-year reign, disappeared from everywhere except the avian lineage. Every non-avian dinosaur species went extinct. The tyrannosaurs, the sauropods, the hadrosaurs, the ceratopsians, the ankylosaurs, all the magnificent diversity of dinosaurian life vanished. In the fossil record, there is a distinct layer, the KPG boundary marking Cretaceous-Paleogene transition, below which dinosaur fossils are abundant and above which they are entirely absent except for birds. The pterosaurs disappeared completely, every species extinct. The marine reptiles vanished, every lineage terminated. The ammonites died out, ending their hundreds of millions of years of evolution. Countless species of plants, insects, fish, mammals, and other organisms went extinct. By some estimates, approximately 75% of all species on Earth died in the extinction event, one of the 5 great mass extinctions in Earth's history and the most recent. But through this apocalypse, in dark waters and shattered wetlands, in rivers choked with debris and swamps turned cold and lifeless, some crocodilians survived. Not all species endured. The exact number of crocodilian species that went extinct versus those that survived remains uncertain from the fossil record. But enough survived, carrying their ancient lineage across the boundary between the Mesozoic and Cenozoic eras, from the age of reptiles to the age of mammals. How did they do it? What allowed these reptiles to survive when so many other creatures perished? The answer lies in that suite of adaptations, that combination of physiological and ecological traits that made crocodilians resilient in the face of catastrophe. The very features that served them well in normal times became critical survival tools when the world turned hostile. Their low metabolic rate, that energy efficiency that allowed them to function on a fraction of the food required by warm-blooded animals of similar size, proved crucial. When food became scarce, when ecosystems collapsed and prey disappeared, the crocodilians could simply wait. Their bodies demanded little. A large crocodile, well fed before the impact, could survive for a year or more without eating, drawing on fat reserves and entering a state of minimal activity. The warm-blooded dinosaurs, even those with efficient metabolisms, could not match this ability. They needed regular food to maintain their body temperatures to power their active lifestyles. When prey disappeared, they faced starvation measured in weeks or months at most. The crocodilians, their metabolism nearly idling, could outwait the worst of the catastrophe. Their semi-aquatic lifestyle provided critical protection from the worst immediate effects of the impact. The thermal pulse from falling ejecta ignited fires across terrestrial environments, but a crocodile submerged in water remained protected. The impact winter brought killing cold to land surfaces, but water temperatures, especially in deeper lakes and rivers, moderated the extremes. Water provided thermal buffering, protecting its inhabitants from the worst temperature swings. Aquatic environments also maintained some productivity even during the darkest months. While photosynthesis stopped in surface waters and on land, the aquatic food chains included detrital components, organisms that fed on dead organic matter rather than living plants. The impact killed vast numbers of creatures, and their bodies accumulated in water systems. This grim bounty provided food for scavengers, detritivores, and the predators that fed on them. Crocodilians, as opportunistic feeders, could exploit this resource. They were not obligate predators of living prey. They would readily scavenge carrion, and the post-impact world provided carrion in abundance. Dead fish, dead dinosaurs washed into rivers, dead anything organic that found its way into water, all could serve as crocodile food. This dietary flexibility, this willingness to eat whatever was available rather than specializing on particular prey types, allowed crocodilians to find sustenance even in degraded ecosystems. Their respiratory adaptations, the ability to hold their breath for extended periods and to function with minimal oxygen, helped them survive in waters that might have become oxygen depleted. The massive die-offs of aquatic organisms, the decomposition of enormous quantities of organic matter, would have consumed dissolved oxygen in many water bodies. Fish and other oxygen-dependent organisms would asphyxiate. Crocodilians, capable of anaerobic metabolism and extreme breath-holding, could survive even in these degraded conditions. The freshwater environments crocodilians inhabited proved more resilient than some marine ecosystems. While oceans experienced acidification and the collapse of plankton-based food chains, freshwater systems received continual input from terrestrial runoff. Dead organic matter washing into rivers and lakes provided material for detrital food chains. Some aquatic insects, particularly those with aquatic larval stages and terrestrial adult stages, survived by virtue of their complex life cycles. These survivors formed the seed populations from which aquatic ecosystems would eventually recover. Crocodilians also benefited from their reproductive strategy. while many adults likely died, either from direct impact effects or from starvation in the years following. Some survived. Female crocodilians can produce large clutches of eggs. A single surviving female, if she found adequate food to maintain condition, could produce dozens of offspring. This reproductive capacity allowed populations to rebound once conditions improved. The parental care crocodilians provided to their young may have offered crucial advantages in the chaotic post-impact environment. Hatchling crocodiles received protection and, in some cases, assistance in finding food during their vulnerable early weeks. This increased their survival odds compared to complete independence from hatching. Some crocodilians may have survived by entering a state of dormancy or estivation. Modern crocodilians can survive extended dry periods by burying themselves in mud and entering a dormant state, reducing their metabolism even below normal levels. It is possible that Cretaceous crocodilians possessed similar abilities, allowing them to endure the worst of the impact winter in a near hibernation state, emerging only when conditions improved. The darkness eventually lifted. Slowly, incrementally, the dust and aerosols that choked the atmosphere settled out or washed away in rain. Months or years after the impact, sunlight began to penetrate once more to Earth's surface. The world that emerged from beneath the shroud bore little resemblance to the vibrant Cretaceous ecosystems that had existed before. Vast areas lay barren, covered in ash and erosion deposits. Forests had vanished, replaced by wastelands of charred stumps and bare soil. The oceans, their food chains shattered, contained only a fraction of their former diversity. The land, once thundering with the footsteps of giants, stood silent except for wind and water, yet life persisted. In protected pockets, in fortunate locations, in the bodies of resilient organisms, the spark remained. Seeds buried in soil began to germinate as light returned. Spores of ferns, those ancient plants that had survived previous mass extinctions, spread across disturbed ground with remarkable speed. Ferns do not require animal pollinators. They reproduce through wind-borne spores and can colonize bare ground rapidly. In the early Paleocene, the period immediately following the Cretaceous extinction, fern spores dominate the fossil record in many locations, creating what paleobotanists call a fern spike, evidence of fern-dominated ecosystems spreading across the devastated landscape. The surviving animals, those fortunate species whose adaptations or circumstances allowed them to endure the catastrophe, found themselves in a world of opportunity and challenge. The dominant groups that had structured ecosystems for millions of years were gone. The dinosaurs no longer occupied the large herbivore and large carnivore niches on land. The pterosaurs no longer patrolled the skies. The marine reptiles no longer ruled oceanic food chains. These vacancies in the ecological structure would eventually be filled, but that process would take millions of years. In the immediate aftermath, the survivors focused simply on persisting. The small mammals that had lived in the shadows of dinosaurs throughout the Mesozoic now ventured into a world without towering predators. These mammals, most no larger than rats or possums, had survived through a combination of factors. Their small size reduced absolute food requirements. Their burrowing habits protected them from the initial thermal pulse and temperature extremes. Their opportunistic diets, many were omnivores or insectivores, allowed them to exploit whatever food sources remained. Some species may have possessed the ability to enter torpor or hibernation, reducing their metabolic needs during the worst periods. The birds, descendants of theropod dinosaurs and therefore dinosaurs themselves in a technical sense, also survived. Not all bird lineages endured. Many Cretaceous bird groups went extinct, but some survived, likely those with generalist diets, those capable of eating seeds and detritus, those with habits that allowed them to endure the impact winter. From these survivors, modern bird diversity would eventually evolve, radiating into the enormous variety we see today. Among reptiles, several lineages besides crocodilians made it through. The turtles, with their protective shells and often aquatic habits, survived in multiple lineages. Their ability to retract into their shells provided protection. Their omnivorous diets allowed dietary flexibility. Their tolerance for low oxygen conditions. Some turtles can survive for months underwater during winter by absorbing oxygen through specialized tissues, helped them endure degraded aquatic conditions. The survival of both freshwater and marine turtle lineages testified to the resilience of the Colonian body plan. The lizards and snakes, the squamates, also survived the extinction event with multiple lineages persisting. These reptiles benefited from small size, which reduced absolute food requirements, and from dietary flexibility. Many lizards are insectivores, and insects proved remarkably resilient to the extinction, likely because many insect life cycles include stages resistant to environmental stress. The snakes, descended from lizard ancestors, also came through the catastrophe, their elongate form and specialized hunting strategies serving them adequately in the post-impact world. The choristoders, a group of semi-aquatic reptiles less familiar than crocodilians but occupying similar ecological niches, also survived the extinction. These creatures, resembling crocodiles with longer necks, lived in freshwater environments across the northern hemisphere during the Mesozoic. They endured the Cretaceous-Paleogene extinction and persisted well into the Cenozoic, not finally disappearing until the Miocene epoch approximately 15 million years ago. Their survival alongside crocodilians demonstrated that the semi-aquatic freshwater niche could support multiple reptilian lineages even in post-apocalyptic conditions. In the oceans, the picture was more grim. The marine reptiles, so diverse and successful throughout the Mesozoic, disappeared entirely. Not a single lineage of mosasaur, plesiosaur, or ichthyosaur survived, though the ichthyosaurs had actually declined before the final extinction. The ammonites vanished completely. Many families of marine invertebrates went extinct. The oceanic ecosystems that recovered were fundamentally different from those that had existed before, dominated by bony fish and sharks rather than marine reptiles, by modern cephalopods like squid and octopi rather than ammonites. But in freshwater systems, in the rivers and lakes and swamps that drain the continents, the crocodilians persisted. Reduced in numbers certainly, likely reduced in species diversity as well, but present. Alive, capable of reproduction, carrying forward their ancient lineage into the new era. As the Paleocene progressed and conditions gradually improved, these survivors began to recover. The recovery of ecosystems proceeded unevenly across the globe, faster in some regions, slower in others, dependent on local conditions and the severity of impact effects, but certain patterns emerged universally. The plant communities recovered first, beginning with the fern spikes and gradually developing into more complex assemblages. Flowering plants' angiosperms had been devastated by the extinction, but they bounced back with remarkable speed. The survivors, those species with hardy seeds or those fortunate enough to persist in protected refugia, spread across available territory. The recovery of plant diversity allowed herbivorous animals to expand their populations. Insects rebounded quickly, their short generation times allowing rapid population growth. The herbivorous insects supported insectivorous predators, including birds, lizards, and small mammals. Terrestrial food chains began to rebuild from the ground up, literally and figuratively, starting with plants and herbivores and gradually supporting larger predators. In aquatic systems, a similar recovery unfolded. Algae and aquatic plants recolonized water bodies. Invertebrates, particularly insects with aquatic larval stages, expanded their populations. Fish, those species that had survived, began to diversify and refill empty ecological niches. And the crocodilians, those patient predators, found increasing prey availability as aquatic ecosystems recovered. The early Paleocene crocodilians likely remained relatively small and conservative in their ecology. With reduced prey availability and still recovering ecosystems, there was no advantage to large size. Smaller individuals required less food and could subsist on smaller prey items. The crocodilian strategy of patient, energy-efficient predation served them well during this recovery period. As millions of years passed and ecosystems continued to recover and develop, crocodilians began to diversify once more. The Cenozoic era, the age of mammals that followed the Mesozoic, saw crocodilians experimenting with various adaptations and body forms, though never straying far from their fundamental semi-aquatic design. Some lineages evolved toward larger sizes, becoming apex predators in their environments. Others remained relatively small, occupying niches as mid-level predators. During the Paleocene and Eocene epochs, the climate remained warmer than today, and crocodilians achieved a broader geographic distribution than they currently possess. Crocodilian fossils from this period have been found in regions far north and south of their modern range. The Arctic Circle, during the Paleocene thermal maximum when global temperatures peaked approximately 56 million years ago, supported subtropical climates where crocodilians thrived. Fossils of crocodilians have been discovered in northern Canada, in Ellesmere Island within the Arctic Circle, testimony to how much warmer the early Cenozoic climate was compared to modern conditions. This widespread distribution during warm periods of the Cenozoic demonstrates that crocodilians are fundamentally tropical and subtropical animals. Their ectothermic metabolism works best in warm climates where external temperatures remain high enough to maintain activity levels. In cooler climates, crocodilians become sluggish, their metabolism slowing to the point where they cannot hunt effectively or, in extreme cases, cannot function at all. The restriction of modern crocodilians to tropical and subtropical regions reflects current climate conditions rather than any fundamental limit of the crocodilian body plan. Some Cenozoic crocodilians achieved truly impressive sizes. Sarcosuchus, though actually a Cretaceous species that went extinct before the KPG boundary, reached lengths possibly exceeding 40 feet and masses of several tons, rivaling the largest modern saltwater crocodiles. Dinosaurs, another Cretaceous giant, may have reached 35 feet or more. These Mesozoic giants demonstrated the upper size limits of the crocodilian body plan. In the Cenozoic, large crocodilians continued to appear. Pterosaurs from the Miocene of South America reached estimated lengths of over 40 feet and masses possibly exceeding 8 tons, making it one of the largest crocodilians ever to exist. This tremendous creature lived in the wetlands and river systems of ancient South America, preying on large mammals and fish. Its skull alone measured over 5 feet in length, equipped with enormous teeth capable of crushing bone and holding massive prey. These giant crocodilians occupied apex predator roles in their ecosystems, the crocodilian equivalents of the large theropod dinosaurs or modern big cats. They demonstrated that the crocodilian body plan, when scaled to extreme sizes and provided with adequate prey, could produce predators capable of taking down almost any animal in their environment. The jaws of these giants generated bite forces measured in tons, among the most powerful of any animal ever to exist. But not all Cenozoic crocodilians pursued gigantism. Many lineages remained moderate in size or even became smaller, specializing in particular prey types or habitats. Some species evolved slender snouts packed with numerous small teeth, adaptations for catching fish. These gharial-like forms appeared multiple times in crocodilian evolutionary history, an example of convergent evolution where similar ecological pressures produce similar anatomical solutions. Other species developed broader, more robust skulls with fewer but larger teeth, designs suited for taking large prey or crushing shelled animals. Some crocodilians specialized in mollusks, developing blunt teeth and powerful jaws for crushing shells. Others remained generalists, maintaining the flexible predatory style that has characterized crocodilians throughout their history. The crocodilians even experimented briefly with terrestrial lifestyles, echoing their Triassic ancestors. During the Cenozoic, some lineages evolved longer legs and more upright postures, allowing faster movement on land. These terrestrial crocodilians occupied ecological niches as land predators, though they never achieved the diversity or dominance of mammalian predators. Most of these terrestrial experiments eventually went extinct, unable to compete effectively with the rapidly diversifying mammals. The failure of terrestrial crocodilians to achieve lasting success highlights an important principle of crocodilian evolution. Their greatest success has always come from maintaining their semi-aquatic lifestyle. Every time crocodilians have strayed too far from water, either toward fully terrestrial habits or toward fully aquatic lifestyles, those experiments have ultimately failed. The interface between water and land, that ecological boundary zone, represents the sweet spot for crocodilian success. Throughout the Cenozoic, as mammals diversified and came to dominate terrestrial ecosystems, crocodilians maintained their position in aquatic and semi-aquatic environments. They did not compete directly with the evolving mammalian predators on land. They did not try to become whales or seals in the oceans. They held their niche, occupying the ecological space they had claimed millions of years earlier, doing what crocodilians do best. This evolutionary conservatism, this tendency to maintain a successful body plan rather than constantly modifying it, characterizes crocodilian history. Since the early Mesozoic, the basic crocodilian form has remained remarkably consistent. 4 legs for terrestrial movement, a powerful tail for aquatic propulsion, elongated jaws studded with conical teeth, armored skin with protective osteoderms, eyes and nostrils positioned on top of the head for surface breathing while mostly submerged. This combination has persisted for over 200 million years with only minor variations. Why has the crocodilian body plan remained so stable while other lineages, including their close relatives the dinosaurs and birds, have evolved wildly diverse forms? The answer lies in the concept of adaptive peaks. In evolutionary theory, an adaptive peak represents a particularly successful combination of traits that is difficult to improve upon through small changes. Most mutations or variations make the organism less fit, not more fit, because the current design already works so well. Crocodilians found their adaptive peak early in their evolutionary history. The semi-aquatic ambush predator lifestyle, powered by efficient ectothermic metabolism and opportunistic feeding, worked extraordinarily well. Any significant deviation from this successful formula tended to produce less competitive organisms. Selection therefore favored conservatism, maintaining what worked rather than experimenting with radical changes. This is not to say crocodilians stopped evolving. They continued to adapt to changing conditions, to develop variations suited to different environments, to experiment with size ranges and dietary specializations. But these changes occurred within the framework of the fundamental crocodilian body plan. They represented fine-tuning rather than redesign, adjustments rather than transformations. The crocodilian skull exemplifies this combination of conservation and variation. All crocodilians possess elongated skulls with the eyes and nostrils positioned dorsally, on top of the head. This configuration allows the animal to see and breathe while floating at the surface with the rest of the body submerged. The snout houses numerous teeth set in sockets, a feature called thecodont dentition that crocodilians share with dinosaurs, but which is absent in other modern reptiles. Within this basic pattern, tremendous variation exists. The gharials and their relatives possess extremely long, slender snouts packed with over 100 needle-like teeth, perfectly adapted for catching fish with rapid sideways sweeps of the head. The alligators and caimans tend toward broader, rounder snouts with varying tooth sizes, suited for generalist predation on diverse prey. The crocodiles show intermediate forms, with moderately pointed snouts and visible fourth lower teeth even when the mouth is closed, a distinguishing feature from alligators. These variations in skull shape reflect different ecological specializations while maintaining the fundamental crocodilian design. Natural selection has sculpted skull proportions to match dietary preferences and prey types, but has not altered the basic architecture. The result is a family of related but distinct forms, all recognizably crocodilian, all successful in their respective niches. The crocodilian dental system shows elegant engineering. Unlike mammals, which replace their teeth only once, crocodilians replace their teeth continuously throughout life. A crocodile may go through 3,000 or more teeth during its lifetime, with new teeth constantly developing to replace those lost to wear, damage, or the struggles of prey capture. This polyphyodont dentition ensures that the crocodile always possesses functional weapons regardless of how many teeth are broken or worn away. The teeth themselves are relatively simple compared to mammalian teeth. They are conical, designed for gripping and holding rather than cutting or chewing. Crocodilians do not chew their food in the mammalian sense. They cannot move their jaws side to side for grinding. Instead, they use their teeth to grip prey, and they employ various techniques to process food into swallowable pieces. For smaller prey, a crocodile simply grips and swallows whole. For larger prey, the famous death roll comes into play. By gripping a portion of the prey and spinning rapidly along its long axis, the crocodile uses torque and the prey's own body weight to tear off chunks of flesh. This technique allows crocodiles to process prey far too large to swallow whole, dismembering carcasses through repeated rolling and tearing. Crocodilians also engage in cooperative feeding when consuming very large prey. Multiple individuals may attack a carcass simultaneously, each gripping different portions and rolling or pulling to tear the body apart. While not coordinated in the sense of planned cooperation, this simultaneous feeding benefits all participants by allowing them to process prey too large for a single individual to handle. The jaw muscles of crocodilians generate tremendous force, among the highest bite forces measured in any living animal. A large saltwater crocodile can exert a bite force exceeding 3,000 pounds per square inch, enough to crush the skull of a water buffalo or snap the leg bones of large prey. This crushing power comes from massive jaw-closing muscles that fill much of the back of the skull and attach to the lower jaw through complex lever systems. Interestingly, while crocodilians possess incredibly powerful jaw-closing muscles, their jaw-opening muscles are relatively weak. A person can hold a crocodile's jaws shut with their bare hands, though opening those jaws against the crocodile's resistance is impossible. This asymmetry makes sense given the crocodile's needs. Closing the jaws to grip prey requires tremendous force. Opening the jaws operates against no resistance and requires little power. The crocodilian jaw joint exhibits another fascinating feature. It can withstand forces that would dislocate the jaws of most other animals. The joint is reinforced with extra bones and connective tissue, allowing the crocodile to maintain its grip on thrashing prey that might generate enormous torque. The ability to hold on regardless of how violently the prey struggles has been key to crocodilian hunting success. Behind the impressive jaws lies a sophisticated sensory system. Crocodilian eyes are well adapted to their semi-aquatic lifestyle. The pupils can contract to narrow vertical slits in bright light, protecting the sensitive retina, and dilate to nearly circular openings in darkness, gathering maximum available light. The retina contains both rods for night vision and cones for color vision, giving crocodilians good visual acuity in various light conditions. A reflective layer behind the retina, called the tapetum lucidum, bounces light back through the photoreceptors, effectively giving them a second chance to capture photons. This adaptation enhances night vision and causes the Ishan scene when light illuminates crocodilian eyes in darkness. Those glowing red or orange eyes, reflecting a flashlight beam across a dark swamp, have startled many nighttime observers. The eyes themselves are protected by 3 eyelids. The upper and lower lids work conventionally. But crocodilians also possess a nictitating membrane, a transparent third eyelid that sweeps horizontally across the eye. This membrane protects the eye underwater while still allowing the crocodile to see. When submerged, the crocodile can close the nictitating membrane and keep the other eyelids open, maintaining vision while protecting the delicate eye surface. The positioning of the eyes on top of the skull creates binocular vision in the forward direction. When the crocodile floats at the surface, it can judge distances accurately, crucial for timing attacks. The ability to see forward with both eyes allows depth perception, letting the crocodile calculate exactly when lunging prey has come within striking range. The nostrils, also positioned on top of the snout, can be sealed by valves when the crocodile submerges. This prevents water from entering the nasal passages. The internal anatomy includes a palatal valve, a flap of tissue at the back of the throat that can seal off the respiratory system from the mouth. This allows a crocodile to open its mouth underwater without drowning, useful when gripping prey beneath the surface. The respiratory system that lies behind these adaptations shows sophisticated engineering. Crocodilian lungs are fixed in position within the body cavity, attached to the body wall and unable to expand and contract like mammalian lungs. Instead, crocodilians breathe by moving other organs. The liver, attached to a muscular diaphragm, moves backward to expand the lung cavity and draw in air, then forward to compress the lungs and expel air. This hepatic piston system allows crocodilians to control their buoyancy with remarkable precision. By adjusting how much air they hold in their lungs, they can float at the surface, sink slowly, or hover at mid-depth. This control aids in their ambush hunting strategy, allowing them to position themselves at the perfect depth to explode upward at prey while remaining nearly invisible beneath murky water. The circulatory system includes that remarkable heart with its foramen of Panizza, allowing blood to bypass the lungs when the crocodile holds its breath. This is supplemented by remarkable tolerance for oxygen debt and lactic acid buildup. During a death roll or violent struggle with prey, a crocodile may engage in intense anaerobic activity, building up lactic acid in its muscles. The crocodile can tolerate levels of lactic acid that would be fatal to mammals, allowing sustained intense activity even while holding its breath. After such exertion, the crocodile needs a recovery period. It may rest for an hour or more, breathing heavily to pay back its oxygen debt and clear metabolic waste products. This recovery requirement limits how often a crocodile can engage in violent activity, but for an ambush predator that may wait days or weeks between hunts, this poses no significant disadvantage. The crocodilian integument, the skin and its associated structures, provides both protection and sensory information. The dorsal surface, the back and upper sides, is armored with osteoderms, bony plates embedded in the skin that overlay the ribs and vertebrae. These plates protect the crocodile from attacks by other predators and from the thrashing of prey. In some species, the osteoderms possess a keel or ridge, giving the back a jagged, armored appearance. The ventral surface, the belly, lacks osteoderms in most species, instead possessing smoother, more flexible skin. This difference made crocodilians vulnerable to hunting, as belly skin proved valuable for leather products. Conservation efforts in the modern era have focused partly on regulating or eliminating hunting to protect wild populations. Embedded in the scales, particularly around the jaws, are specialized sensory organs called integumentary sense organs. These small, dome-shaped structures detect pressure changes and chemical signals in the water. They are extraordinarily sensitive, capable of detecting tiny vibrations and ripples. A crocodile can sense prey moving in the water even in complete darkness, relying entirely on these tactile sensors. The sensitivity of these organs approaches that of the lateral line system in fish. They allow a crocodile to construct a detailed map of its aquatic environment based purely on water movements. A fish swimming nearby creates pressure waves that the crocodile detects and interprets, determining the size, distance, and direction of movement of potential prey without seeing it. Crocodilians also possess good hearing, with ears located behind the eyes, marked by external flaps that seal when the animal submerges. They can detect sounds across a wide frequency range, including low-frequency vibrations traveling through water and substrate. This auditory sensitivity allows them to detect prey animals approaching the water's edge, to hear the distress calls of their young, and to respond to the vocalizations of other crocodilians. Vocal communication plays a significant role in crocodilian social behavior. Crocodilians produce a remarkable variety of sounds for reptiles. Hatchlings emit high-pitched distress calls that alert adults to danger or signal that they are ready to emerge from the nest. Adults produce coughs, hisses, and roars used in territorial displays and courtship. The bellow of a large male alligator or crocodile, a deep resonant sound that can carry for miles, announces his presence and dominance. During mating season, these vocalizations intensify. Males engage in elaborate displays, bellowing while inflating their bodies with air, making the water around them dance with visible vibrations called the water dance. The low-frequency sound waves generate standing waves on the water surface, creating a dramatic visual display that accompanies the auditory signal. These displays advertise the male's size and vigor to potential mates and warn rival males to keep their distance. The mating behavior of crocodilians involves courtship rituals that can be surprisingly complex for reptiles. Males and females engage in mutual displays, swimming alongside each other, rubbing heads and bodies, blowing bubbles. The male may mount the female multiple times over hours before copulation occurs. This extended courtship may serve to synchronize the physiological states of both animals and ensure successful mating. After mating, the female prepares her nest. Depending on species, she either excavates a hole in sand or soil, or constructs a mound from vegetation and mud. The mound nesting species create structures several feet high and wide, using decomposing vegetation to generate heat that helps incubate the eggs. The hole nesting species rely on solar heat and substrate temperature. The female lays between 20 and 80 eggs depending on species and individual size, depositing them in the nest and carefully covering them. She then begins her vigil, remaining near the nest throughout the incubation period, which lasts approximately 2 to 3 months. During this time, she defends the nest from potential predators, including monitor lizards, raccoons, mongooses, and other animals that would readily eat crocodilian eggs. This extended parental care represents a significant investment. The female may eat little or nothing during the nesting period, losing body condition to protect her offspring. But this investment increases hatchling survival significantly compared to abandoning the nest, as most reptiles do. The temperature of the developing eggs determines the sex of the hatchlings through the temperature-dependent sex determination system mentioned earlier. In most crocodilian species, intermediate temperatures produce females while both higher and lower temperatures produce males, though the specific pattern varies by species. This creates a challenge in a warming world, as climate change could potentially skew sex ratios, but more on the relationship between crocodilians and modern environmental changes later. When the eggs are ready to hatch, the young crocodiles begin calling from inside their shells. These calls stimulate their siblings, synchronizing hatching, and alert the mother that the time has come. The female carefully excavates the nest, sometimes gently breaking eggs to help hatchlings emerge. She may carry the babies in her mouth, a sight both terrifying and tender, transporting them from nest to water without harming them despite her powerful jaws. The hatchlings remain with their mother for weeks to months, depending on species. She protects them from predators, allows them to bask on her back, and in some cases may assist them in catching prey. This extended care gives the young crocodiles a better chance of surviving their vulnerable early period when they face predation from birds, fish, mammals, and even other crocodilians, including adult males. Despite this protection, mortality among young crocodilians remains high. Only a small percentage of hatchlings survive to adulthood. Large fish, wading birds, raptors, snakes, monitor lizards, and other predators take a heavy toll. Cannibalism by larger crocodilians further reduces numbers, but enough survive to maintain populations, and the combination of large clutch size and parental care provides a workable reproductive strategy. Those hatchlings that survive grow relatively quickly for the first several years, then more slowly as they approach adult size. Crocodilians exhibit indeterminate growth, continuing to grow throughout their lives, though the rate slows dramatically after reaching sexual maturity. This means very old individuals can become very large, assuming they have access to adequate food and avoid mortality factors. The The growth rate varies with temperature and food availability. A well-fed crocodile in a warm climate grows faster than one in cooler conditions with less food. In optimal conditions, some species can reach sexual maturity in less than 10 years. In harsher environments, maturity may take 15 years or longer. Maximum lifespan in the wild remains uncertain for most species, but large individuals may live 70 years or more, with some potentially exceeding 100 years. This longevity contributes to crocodilian resilience. A long-lived individual has multiple opportunities to reproduce across many years. Even if environmental conditions cause reproductive failure in some years, the individual survives to try again when conditions improve. The combination of longevity and the ability to endure extended periods without food provides population-level stability across fluctuating environmental conditions. The social structure of crocodilian populations, while less complex than mammalian social systems, nonetheless shows organization beyond random aggregation. Dominance hierarchies exist, typically with the largest males controlling prime territories and breeding access. Smaller males occupy marginal territories or remain non-territorial. Females establish territories during nesting season but may be more flexible outside breeding periods. Crocodilians recognize individual conspecifics and adjust their behavior based on past interactions. A subordinate male encountering a dominant male will display submissive behaviors, lowering his body, avoiding eye contact, sometimes swimming away to avoid confrontation. Dominant individuals display confidence, holding their heads high, directly approaching subordinates, occasionally engaging in threat displays or actual combat to maintain status. These hierarchies reduce serious fighting by establishing clear social relationships. Most conflicts resolve through displays rather than combat. When fighting does occur, it can be spectacular and violent, with large males lunging, biting, and attempting to flip or push each other underwater. But such battles rarely result in death. The loser typically flees, and the winner allows the retreat rather than pursuing to kill. In some species and situations, crocodilians aggregate in groups that provide mutual benefits. Basking aggregations allow multiple individuals to share prime thermal sites. Cooperative feeding on large carcasses benefits all participants. Nesting aggregations may provide some protection against predators through dilution effects, where individual risk decreases as group size increases. However, these aggregations differ fundamentally from the complex social groups of mammals. Crocodilians do not form long-term bonds beyond mother-offspring relationships. They do not cooperate in coordinated hunts with role division. They do not provision each other or engage in reciprocal altruism. Their sociality represents opportunistic tolerance and dominance-based organization rather than mammalian-style cooperative grouping. The hunting strategies of crocodilians showcase their patient, energy-efficient approach to predation. The classic strategy involves motionless waiting at the water's edge or in shallows frequented by prey. The crocodile may wait for hours, days, or even weeks, barely moving, conserving energy until opportunity presents itself. When prey approaches within range, the crocodile explodes into violent action, lunging from the water with shocking speed. This attack relies on anatomical features specialized for rapid acceleration. The powerful tail muscles generate thrust. The legs, normally sprawled to the sides, can tuck under the body momentarily to provide additional push. The long jaws open wide, studded with teeth ready to seize prey. The entire attack, from rest to full extension, occurs in a second or less, too fast for most prey to react. If the attack succeeds, the crocodile immediately attempts to secure its grip, and if the prey is large and terrestrial, drag it into the water. Aquatic prey may be manipulated with head shakes and rolls to disorient or drown them. Terrestrial prey dragged underwater typically drowns quickly. The crocodile holds the victim beneath the surface, maintaining its grip until struggles cease. For dangerous prey that might injure the crocodile, this drowning strategy reduces risk. A crocodile can grip a struggling mammal and simply wait underwater until it drowns, avoiding the thrashing hooves or horns that might cause injury during a surface struggle. The crocodile's ability to hold its breath far outlasts any mammalian prey's ability to survive underwater. Not all hunting involves ambush from concealment. Some crocodilians actively patrol territories, investigating likely prey locations. Nile crocodiles have been observed working together to herd fish into shallows where they become easier to catch. While not cooperative hunting in the sense of coordinated role division, this represents sophisticated exploitation of prey behavior and terrain. Crocodilians also scavenge opportunistically. A carcass floating in a river or washed up on shore attracts crocodiles from considerable distances, possibly detected by smell. While crocodilian olfaction is not as acute as that of mammalian scavengers, they can detect chemical cues in water and air. A dead animal represents an energy windfall, food obtained without the effort and risk of hunting, and crocodiles readily exploit such opportunities. The feeding ecology and impact of crocodilians on their ecosystems extends beyond direct predation. Modern ecological studies have revealed that crocodilians serve multiple important ecosystem functions. As apex predators, they regulate prey populations, preventing overgrazing or overcrowding. They preferentially take weak, old, or diseased individuals, exerting selective pressure that maintains prey population health. The presence of crocodilians affects prey behavior. Herbivorous mammals alter their watering patterns, approach water cautiously, and spend less time drinking when crocodiles are present. This behavioral influence can reduce grazing pressure near water bodies, allowing riparian vegetation to recover. The so-called landscape of fear created by predators structures ecosystems in ways beyond direct killing of prey. Crocodilians also engineer their habitats through their activities. The wallows, deeper pools excavated by crocodiles in wetlands and rivers, provide dry-season refugia for fish and other aquatic organisms. During droughts when surrounding areas dry up, these crocodile pools may represent the only remaining water, concentrating aquatic life and allowing it to survive until rains return. Other species thus benefit from crocodilian habitat modification. The nutrient cycling role of crocodilians also matters ecologically. By killing large prey and consuming portions of carcasses, crocodiles concentrate nutrients from terrestrial environments into aquatic systems. Unconsumed portions of carcasses decompose in the water, releasing nutrients that fertilize aquatic primary production. Crocodile feces contribute additional nutrients. In nutrient-poor tropical waters, these inputs can significantly affect productivity. In marine and estuarine environments, crocodilians move between freshwater and saltwater habitats, potentially transferring nutrients between systems. The saltwater crocodiles of the Indo-Pacific region travel extensively through coastal waters, sometimes covering hundreds of miles. Their movements and feeding connect ecosystems that might otherwise have limited exchange. The evolutionary success of crocodilians across 200 million years, their survival of multiple mass extinctions, their persistence as top predators in their chosen environments, all testify to the effectiveness of their design. They have not achieved this success through innovation or radical transformation, but through refinement and persistence. The crocodilian approach to survival emphasizes efficiency over intensity, patience over aggression, endurance over speed. This strategy creates what ecologists call a K-selected species, though crocodilians show elements of both K-selection and R-selection. They are long-lived and produce relatively few offspring that receive parental care, K-selected traits, but they also produce clutches of dozens of eggs and reach sexual maturity relatively quickly, R-selected traits. This mixed strategy provides flexibility, allowing crocodilian populations to weather both stable conditions and periodic catastrophes. The fossil record documents this resilience. Crocodilians have survived not just the Cretaceous-Paleogene extinction, but earlier mass extinctions as well. Their lineage extends through the Triassic-Jurassic extinction approximately 200 million years ago, one of the big five mass extinctions. They persisted through the Permian-Triassic extinction, though this preceded the origin of true crocodilians and instead affected their ancestral archosaur lineage. Each time life faced catastrophe, each time extinction swept across the planet removing dominant groups and restructuring ecosystems, some crocodilians survived. They endured the climatic fluctuations of the Cenozoic, from the hothouse world of the Paleocene-Eocene thermal maximum to the ice ages of the Pleistocene. They adapted to changing geography, continental drift, sea level variations, and the rise of new competitive groups. The ice ages of the Pleistocene, beginning approximately 2.6 million years ago, restricted crocodilian ranges as glaciers advanced and global temperatures dropped. Crocodilians retreated from higher latitudes, unable to survive the cold, but in tropical and subtropical refugia they persisted. When glaciers retreated during interglacial periods, crocodilians expanded their ranges again, reoccupying territories temporarily abandoned. This pattern of range expansion and contraction characterized crocodilian biogeography throughout the Cenozoic. During warm periods, they spread toward the poles. During cold periods, they retreated toward the equator. Always they persisted in the tropical core of their range, those regions where temperatures remained suitable for their ectothermic physiology. The Pleistocene also brought humanity's evolutionary rise. The ancestors of modern humans evolved in Africa during this epoch, and humans eventually spread across the globe, carrying with them increasing technological sophistication. Early humans encountered crocodilians in African and Asian environments, and these encounters shaped human culture and crocodilian populations in ways still unfolding today. For most of human prehistory, crocodilians and humans existed as mutual threats. Crocodiles killed humans who ventured too close to water. Humans killed crocodiles for food, for safety, and eventually for materials like skin and teeth. Rock art from ancient human cultures depicts crocodiles, suggesting they held both fearsome and perhaps spiritual significance. As human civilizations developed, relationships with crocodilians varied by culture. Ancient Egyptian civilization revered crocodiles, associating them with the god Sobek. Crocodiles were mummified and buried in elaborate tombs. Sacred pools housed crocodiles that received offerings. This religious veneration provided some protection, though Egyptians also hunted crocodiles in some contexts. Other cultures viewed crocodilians primarily as threats to be eliminated or resources to be exploited. But for thousands of years, human impacts on crocodilian populations remained relatively limited. Humans lacked the technology for large-scale exploitation. Hunting was local and small-scale, insufficient to seriously deplete populations. Crocodilians maintained their ecological roles, coexisting uneasily with human settlements. This changed during the colonial period and especially during the 19th and 20th centuries. Industrialization brought demand for exotic leather goods. Crocodilian skin, with its unique scale patterns and durability, became highly valued. Hunting intensified, transitioning from subsistence and local use to commercial exploitation for international markets. The impact was devastating. Species after species experienced dramatic population declines. The American alligator, once abundant throughout the southeastern wetlands, was hunted to near extinction by the mid-20th century. Saltwater crocodiles, the largest living reptile, were eliminated from much of their range. The gharial of India declined to critically low numbers. The Chinese alligator, already restricted to a small range, teetered on the edge of extinction. Habitat destruction compounded the impact of hunting. Wetlands were drained for agriculture. Rivers were dammed and diverted. Coastal mangroves were cleared for development. The specialized habitats crocodilians required disappeared across their ranges. Populations that had survived for millions of years faced potential extinction within decades. By the mid-20th century, several crocodilian species faced genuine extinction risk. The combination of unrestricted hunting and habitat loss had pushed populations beyond sustainable levels. Without intervention, some species would have disappeared, joining their Cretaceous relatives in permanent extinction. Recognition of this crisis led to conservation action. International treaties like the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species, CITES, regulated or banned commercial trade in crocodilian products. National legislation in various countries protected crocodilians and their habitats. Hunting was regulated or prohibited. Habitat protection efforts began, though with mixed success. Captive breeding programs worked to increase populations of the most endangered species. The gharial, reduced to perhaps 200 individuals in the wild by the 1970s, was bred in captivity and released, slowly increasing wild populations. The Chinese alligator, functionally extinct in the wild with perhaps 100 individuals remaining, was bred in captivity with thousands now existing in protected facilities, though wild populations remain critically small. The American alligator recovery stands as a conservation success story. Protected under the Endangered Species Act in the 1970s, when populations had crashed to perhaps 100,000 individuals, alligators rebounded dramatically. Populations today exceed 5 million individuals. The species was removed from endangered status and is now sustainably managed, with regulated hunting allowed in some areas. This recovery demonstrated that crocodilian populations, given protection and adequate habitat, could bounce back from severe depletion. Their long lifespan and steady reproductive output, combined with effective protection, allowed populations to rebuild within decades. The American alligator now serves as proof that conservation measures work when properly implemented and enforced. Other species have shown similar but less complete recovery. Nile crocodile populations have increased in many areas following hunting restrictions. Saltwater crocodiles have recolonized portions of their former range. The success varies by region and species, dependent on enforcement of protections and habitat availability, but the overall trajectory has been positive for many populations. However, this recovery creates new challenges. As crocodilian populations increase, human-crocodile conflict intensifies. Crocodiles occasionally attack humans, particularly in regions where people depend on water bodies inhabited by crocodiles for drinking water, bathing, fishing, and transportation. These attacks, while statistically rare compared to other causes of mortality, generate fear and resistance to conservation efforts. Managing this conflict requires balancing human safety with crocodilian conservation. Strategies include education about avoiding risky behaviors, physical barriers between human use areas and crocodile habitat, removal of problem individuals, and compensation programs for livestock losses. Success requires ongoing engagement with local communities, addressing their concerns while maintaining protections for crocodilians. Habitat loss continues to threaten many crocodilian populations despite recovery from overhunting. Wetlands globally face pressure from agriculture, development, pollution, and water diversion. Coastal habitats suffer from sea level rise, erosion, and development. Rivers experience damming, pollution, and altered flow regimes. These habitat changes affect crocodilians both directly by reducing available space and indirectly by reducing prey populations and degrading environmental quality. Climate change presents an emerging threat with uncertain but potentially serious implications. Rising temperatures could shift suitable habitat ranges, potentially expanding them toward the poles but degrading them in tropical regions if temperatures exceed crocodilian tolerance. Altered rainfall patterns could affect wetland ecosystems crocodilians depend on. Sea level rise threatens coastal nesting beaches and estuarine habitats. The temperature-dependent sex determination system creates a specific climate change vulnerability. If nest temperatures increase beyond optimal ranges, sex ratios could become severely skewed, potentially producing almost entirely male or entirely female populations. This could compromise reproduction and population viability. Some crocodilian populations may adapt through behavioral changes, females selecting different nest sites to achieve appropriate temperatures, but the pace of climate change may outstrip adaptive capacity. Despite these challenges, crocodilians possess characteristics that provide resilience even in changing conditions. Their dietary flexibility allows them to adapt to changing prey availability. Their physiological tolerance for temperature variation, while having limits, provides some buffering against climate change. Their longevity and reproductive output allow populations to persist through periods of poor recruitment. Their evolutionary history of surviving changing conditions suggests they possess the fundamental tools for enduring modern environmental changes. The story of crocodilians across deep time offers perspective on modern conservation challenges. These creatures have survived multiple mass extinctions, dramatic climate changes, the rise and fall of dominant groups, continental drift, sea level fluctuations, and ecosystem transformations. They have persisted for over 200 million years, maintaining their essential form and ecological role while continents rearranged and entire faunas turned over. This perspective does not guarantee future survival. Past success does not ensure future persistence. The modern world presents challenges unprecedented in crocodilian evolutionary history: the rapid pace of human-driven environmental change, the fragmentation of habitats by human infrastructure, the direct persecution and exploitation by a technologically advanced species. These challenges differ in kind, not just degree, from the environmental changes crocodilians have previously survived. Yet the characteristics that allowed crocodilians to survive past catastrophes remain relevant today. Their low metabolic requirements mean they need less habitat and prey than warm-blooded predators of comparable size. Their dietary flexibility allows adaptation to changing prey communities. Their reproductive capacity enables population recovery when conditions permit. Their longevity provides resilience against periodic reproductive failures. Most fundamentally, the crocodilian strategy of persistence through restraint, of maintaining a successful design rather than constant transformation, of occupying a specialized niche and defending it rather than attempting to dominate new territories, offers lessons relevant beyond biology. In an era of rapid change and disruption, there is value in identifying what works and maintaining it, in recognizing that adaptation does not always require transformation. The crocodilian body plan, refined over millions of years, represents an optimal solution to the challenges of semi-aquatic predation in tropical and subtropical environments. It is not the only solution. Other predators from fish to mammals have evolved different approaches to similar niches, but it is an effective solution, proven across geological time scales that dwarf human experience. This effectiveness emerges from integration of multiple systems, each contributing to the overall performance. The low metabolism reduces resource requirements. The semi-aquatic lifestyle provides access to multiple food sources and protection from environmental extremes. The armored skin offers protection. The powerful jaws enable exploitation of large prey. The sensory systems provide information about the environment. The parental care increases offspring survival. Each element supports the others, creating an integrated whole greater than the sum of parts. Evolution rarely produces perfection, but it reliably produces sufficiency. An organism needs not perfect adaptation, but adequate adaptation, good enough to survive, reproduce, and pass genes to the next generation. The crocodilian design has proven more than adequate. It has thrived. Through the age of dinosaurs and the age of mammals, through tropical hothouse worlds and ice age climates, through mass extinctions and evolutionary radiations, it has endured. Modern crocodilians, the 24 species currently recognized, represent the latest chapter in this ancient story. The gharials of Indian rivers, with their slender snouts adapted for fish catching, continue a lineage extending back tens of millions of years. The American alligators of southeastern wetlands, having recovered from near extinction, once again fulfill their ecological role as apex predators and ecosystem engineers. The saltwater crocodiles of the Indo-Pacific, the largest living reptiles, patrol coastal waters as their ancestors have for millions of years. Each species faces unique challenges and opportunities based on its specific range, habitat, and relationship with human populations. But all share the fundamental crocodilian characteristics, the ancient heritage that connects them to predecessors stretching back through deep time. When an alligator bellows in a Florida swamp, the sound echoes similar calls made when dinosaurs walked the earth. When a Nile crocodile explodes from an African river to seize prey, it employs a hunting strategy perfected over countless generations. These modern survivors carry forward a legacy of resilience. They are living fossils, not in the sense of being unchanged, but in the sense of maintaining fundamental design elements across vast spans of time. They remind us that success in nature does not require constant innovation. Sometimes the greatest achievement is recognizing when you have found an effective approach and maintaining it despite pressures to change. In the waters of the Cretaceous, crocodilians waited as the asteroid approached. They could not have known what was coming, possessed no capacity to understand that their world was about to end. They simply existed, occupying their ecological niche, hunting, reproducing, enduring. When catastrophe struck, when the sky burned and the world fell into darkness, they survived not through foresight or planning, but through the accumulated adaptations of millions of years of evolution. The low metabolism that let them survive without food through long periods of scarcity. The semi-aquatic lifestyle that buffered them against temperature extremes and provided multiple food sources. The opportunistic diet that allowed them to exploit whatever resources remained. The physiological resilience that let them endure conditions that killed less adaptable creatures. These were not adaptations developed in response to the asteroid impact. They were existing features, evolved for other reasons, that happened to be useful when catastrophe came. This is how evolution prepares organisms for the unpredictable, not through prescience but through diversity of adaptations, some of which prove valuable in unexpected contexts. The crocodilian traits that allowed survival of the KPG extinction had evolved over millions of years in response to the normal challenges of crocodilian life. The impact created a situation where these traits suddenly became the difference between survival and extinction. In the dark months after the impact, as ecosystems collapsed and species disappeared, the crocodilians waited. Metabolism slowed to minimal levels, they endured. Hidden in water as temperatures fluctuated wildly, they survived. Scavenging the abundant dead, they found sustenance. Holding their breath in oxygen-depleted water, they outlasted less adaptable creatures. Day by day, week by week, month by month, they persisted. When the dust finally settled and light returned, when plants began to grow again and ecosystems started to rebuild, the crocodilians emerged. Fewer in number, possibly reduced in diversity, but alive, functional, capable of reproduction, ready to continue their lineage into the new era. The world they emerged into differed profoundly from the one that had existed before. The dinosaurs were gone, those magnificent creatures that had dominated for so long. The pterosaurs had vanished from the skies. The marine reptiles had disappeared from the oceans. Entire ecosystems had collapsed and would take millions of years to rebuild in new forms. But the crocodilians remained, living bridges between the old world and the new. This story of survival through catastrophe, of persistence across the greatest mass extinction event in recent Earth history, of maintaining successful design principles across hundreds of millions of years makes crocodilians among the most remarkable animals alive today. They are not the fastest, not the strongest, not the most intelligent. They did not conquer the land like mammals, did not take to the air like birds, did not return to the sea like whales. They stayed in the water's edge. They maintained their patient hunting strategy. They kept their low metabolism and opportunistic diet. They continued being crocodilians, occupying the same general niche their ancestors had claimed in the Mesozoic. And this restraint, this refusal to abandon a successful strategy in pursuit of new opportunities, this persistence in the face of changing conditions, proved to be their greatest strength. As we face our own era of rapid environmental change, as we witness the sixth mass extinction unfolding in real time, largely driven by human activities, the crocodilian story offers both warning and hope. The warning is that even dominant, successful groups can disappear when conditions change beyond their adaptive capacity. The dinosaurs ruled for over 160 million years, far longer than mammals have dominated, yet they vanished except for the bird lineage when catastrophe struck. The hope is that some organisms, through combinations of chance and adaptation, survive even the worst catastrophes. Life finds a way, not through any mystical force, but through the simple mathematics of diversity. If enough different organisms exist with enough different adaptations, some will possess characteristics suited to survival when conditions change. The challenge for conservation is maintaining this diversity, preserving the breadth of life that provides raw material for future adaptation. Crocodilians survived the KPG extinction not because they were better than dinosaurs in any absolute sense. They survived because they were different in ways that happened to matter when the asteroid struck. In the normal Cretaceous world, many dinosaur adaptations were superior for their particular niches, but in the post-impact world, crocodilian adaptations proved more useful. The lesson is that diversity itself has value beyond any individual species' success. This argues for protecting not just charismatic megafauna or economically valuable species, but entire ecosystems with all their component organisms. We cannot predict which adaptations will prove crucial for surviving future environmental changes. The species that seem marginal or unimportant today might possess the key to surviving tomorrow's challenges. Conservation requires maintaining the full spectrum of life's diversity. For crocodilians specifically, the path forward requires balancing their needs with human demands on the environment. This means protecting and restoring wetland habitats, managing human-crocodile conflict through education and practical measures, regulating exploitation to sustainable levels, and monitoring populations for signs of stress from climate change or other factors. It also means recognizing the value of crocodilians beyond their immediate utility to humans. These are ancient creatures, evolved survivors, living representatives of deep time. They connect us to the age of dinosaurs, to worlds unimaginably different from our own, to the vast sweep of evolutionary history. They remind us that the Earth is old, that our species' tenure is brief, that life has persisted through changes far more dramatic than anything in human experience. When we look at a crocodile, we are looking at a design forged over 200 million years, tested against the worst catastrophes Earth could deliver and proven effective. We are seeing an animal whose ancestors witnessed the rise of dinosaurs, the evolution of flowering plants, the breakup of Pangaea, the formation of the Atlantic Ocean, the collision of India with Asia. We are observing a creature whose lineage has seen continents drift, climates transform, ecosystems rise and fall, and dominant groups appear and vanish. This perspective of deep time and evolutionary endurance should inspire both humility and responsibility. Humility because it reminds us how brief our species' existence has been compared to creatures like crocodilians. Homo sapiens has existed for perhaps 300,000 years, a blink in geological time. Crocodilians have persisted 700 times longer. Our technological civilization spans at most 10,000 years, a moment compared to crocodilian endurance. Responsibility because despite our brief tenure, we now possess the power to drive species to extinction, to alter global climate, to transform ecosystems, to trigger the sixth mass extinction. We are the asteroid, the catastrophe that other species must survive. Whether we become a terminal event for crocodilians and countless other species, or whether we exercise restraint and stewardship allowing them to persist, depends on choices we make now and in coming decades. The crocodilians have survived for 200 million years, but they are not invincible. They could not survive the complete destruction of all wetland habitats. They could not survive unrestricted hunting until the last individual was killed. They could not survive climate change so extreme that no suitable habitat remained. These scenarios are within human power to create, even if unintentionally, but we also possess the power to make different choices, to protect habitats, to regulate exploitation, to address climate change, to share the planet with other species rather than monopolizing all resources for human use. The crocodilians will do their part, continuing to employ the strategies that have served them for millions of years. Whether those strategies remain sufficient depends partly on whether we allow them the space and conditions to work. In the end, the crocodilian story is one of persistence through adaptation, of survival through efficiency, of endurance through restraint. It demonstrates that evolutionary success does not require constant innovation or aggressive expansion. Sometimes the wisest strategy is finding what works and maintaining it, recognizing limits and living within them, refusing to chase every opportunity in favor of defending a sustainable position. These lessons apply beyond crocodilian biology. In an era of disruption and rapid change, there is wisdom in identifying truly valuable elements and preserving them. Not everything old should be discarded in favor of novelty. Some designs, some approaches, some principles prove themselves across time and deserve maintenance rather than transformation. The crocodilian body plan is such a design, refined and tested, proven across geological time scales. The crocodilian lifestyle is such an approach, patient and efficient, sustainable across millions of years. The crocodilian strategy is such a principle, persist through flexibility, survive through resilience, endure through restraint. As the sun sets over a modern wetland, a crocodile floats at the surface, eyes just above the water, watching. It waits with the patience of deep time, employing a hunting strategy unchanged in its essentials for millions of years. It carries within its cells genetic instructions shaped by countless generations, refined by selection, tested by catastrophe, and proven sufficient. The water ripples gently around its armored body. Its tail hangs suspended in the dark water below. Its nostrils filter air that once choked with asteroid dust. Its eyes, little changed from those of its Cretaceous ancestors, watch the shore where creatures the crocodile could not comprehend build their cities and change their world. The crocodile does not understand the passage of time, has no concept of its ancient heritage, possesses no awareness of the catastrophes its lineage has survived. It simply exists, occupying its ecological niche, hunting, reproducing, enduring. It does what crocodilians have always done, what they have done since before the dinosaurs fell, what they will continue to do as long as water flows and prey comes to drink. In this persistence, this continuation of ancient patterns into the modern world, lies both the achievement and the promise of the crocodilians. They have survived this long not through dominance but through sufficiency, not through transformation but through persistence. They are living proof that the patient, the efficient, the adaptable can endure across spans of time that dwarf individual lifetimes, species lifespans, even the rise and fall of dominant groups. The asteroid came 66 million years ago, bringing fire and darkness and death. The crocodilians waded in their waters, low metabolisms barely ticking, and survived. They emerged into the new world, carrying forward their ancient lineage, maintaining their timeless role. They persist today, the same in all essential ways yet different in detail, changed by evolution yet recognizably crocodilian. They are survivors, the ultimate survivors, tested against extinction events and validated across deep time. They are living fossils, bridges to the age of dinosaurs, connections to worlds long vanished. They are modern animals, facing contemporary challenges, adapting to current conditions. They are all of these things simultaneously, past and present merged in armored flesh, heritage and adaptation combined in patient predators waiting at the water's edge. The crocodilian story continues, the next chapter yet unwritten. Will they persist for another 200 million years, carrying their lineage forward into futures we cannot imagine? Or will the modern age prove too hostile, the changes too rapid, the human impact too severe? The answer depends partly on chance and partly on choice, on evolution and ecology, on biology and conservation. But if crocodilians could speak, if they could share the wisdom of deep time, perhaps they would tell us this. Success comes not from dominating every environment, but from mastering one niche. Survival results not from constant change, but from maintaining what works. Endurance emerges not from intensity, but from efficiency. Persistence rewards not the flashy or dominant, but the patient and adaptable. These are the lessons written in crocodilian scales, encoded in crocodilian DNA, proven across crocodilian history. They survived the apocalypse not through power but through resilience, not through innovation but through sufficiency, not through conquest but through endurance. They are the ancient survivors, the persistent predators, the living bridges between the age of reptiles and the modern world. And they wait still at the water's edge as they have always waited, as their ancestors waited when the asteroid came, as their descendants may wait long after human civilization has passed into geological record. Patient, efficient, enduring, forever crocodilian.